Obviously, July 4th was only a week ago, but on July 4th, or maybe it was a day thereafter, I saw either a correspondent or a regular guest, and I think she was on MSNBC or CNN. What's the difference? And she said to the host that the Constitution does not serve our purposes anymore. It was written by a handful of white slave owners. This is what you get from the Marxist left, the Constitution. What's in the Constitution? Due process, free speech, freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, the right to be protected in your home, probable cause, all kinds of protections for the individual. What else is in the Constitution? Limitations on government, limitations on Congress, limitations on the presidency, limitations on the courts. So we don't have a kind of totalitarian regime centralized in one place, which is what the founders fought against. What else do we have in the Constitution? We have all kinds of things in the Constitution that promote what we call the civil society, law and order, and protect the individual. You see, these people who wrote the Constitution and adopted the Constitution, most of them were people of faith. Most of them were learned, even though they didn't all go to Princeton. Most of them looked back on the various governments that had existed before ours and during their times. And so they researched, they thought, they looked at philosophers, they looked at Aristotle and Cicero, they looked at Abraham and Moses, they looked at Jesus, they looked at so much. In 5.5 months in Philadelphia, they came up with the Constitution. And that Constitution wasn't imposed on the people. Every state legislature had a say. That is, they had a convention. Those state legislatures, where the individuals in those legislatures were elected at the localist of levels back then. And they would have these conventions of regular people and legislators who would get together and make decisions about what they supported and what they didn't support. Much more quote-unquote democratic, wasn't it? So when you have people go on television and denounce the entirety of the Constitution, you can then understand why they embrace and celebrate something like the January 6th committee in the House of Representatives. Every member of that committee was approved by and chosen by Nancy Pelosi, one of the most evil speakers of the House in American history, one of the most diabolical politicians in modern American history. All members on that committee, all 9, voted to impeach Donald Trump, who is the subject of their investigation. Not January 6th, not security for the Capitol, but Donald Trump. Someone once said it's like the 3rd impeachment. It pretty much is. At least 5 of the 9 members have openly, publicly, in the press, stated their purpose is to pressure the United States Department of Justice under the Attorney General appointed by Biden and the U.S. Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney appointed by Biden, to indict former President Trump to ensure that he never gets close to the Oval Office again, that he can't take over the Republican Party, that he can't run for office again. That is a clearly unconstitutional process for the House of Representatives to be involved in. This committee leaks, it cherry picks information, it conceals exculpatory information, it conceals any information or witnesses that and who challenge their narrative. It manipulates evidence, and the entire public hearing process is a choreographed Stalinist show trial. They read from monitors, they show video, they have graphics, all in procession. The committee is investigating the Republican National Committee, scores of private nonprofit organizations, Republican state officials, election attorneys, conservative media figures and organizations. Wow, that seems a little bit out of their jurisdiction. The committee has secretly obtained emails, text messages, and phone records, often without the knowledge of citizens, so the citizens can't go to court and challenge them. There have been violations left and right of attorney-client privilege, of attorney work product, of confidentiality. This is a core fundamental principle in our system of justice, ladies and gentlemen. The committee is now using extreme left-wing groups, it was just learned, that are tied to the Democrat Party, such as the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has come under financial and other scrutiny in the recent past, to funnel research to the committee. Quote, our work has helped to document coordination between Trump, his allies, and two extremist groups we've tracked for years, said the Southern Poverty Law Center to Politico. And this group, Southern Poverty Law Center, often smears Christian organizations, traditional conservative groups, and labels them as hate groups, among other things. Meanwhile, there hasn't been one syllable of testimony in front of the public regarding testimony this committee has received in secret by a number of witnesses, that it was Donald Trump who authored a document authorizing up to 20,000 armed military National Guardsmen to protect the Capitol building. He issued that authorization 2 days before January 6th. It was turned down by Nancy Pelosi, and it was turned down by the mayor of Washington, D.C. Doesn't it sort of undermine the whole notion that he was in charge of some insurrection? I also learned, as I interviewed Kash Patel, the former chief of staff over at DOD, on my radio show, that Trump also authorized, after the election in November, the Department of Defense to prepare transition to a Biden administration. You can challenge the election while at the same time allowing the government to go forward with a likely or possible transition, which is exactly what Donald Trump was doing. At the same time, Biden's appointed U.S. Attorney and Attorney General are obviously coordinating with this committee and attempting to criminalize challenges to the 2020 election in ways we've never seen before in American history and will do grave damage to our political system. A candidate, listen to me, a candidate or his surrogates can and have, under our Constitution, challenged the vote in states, not only through litigation, like Al Gore tried to litigate himself into the Oval Office, but through the state legislatures. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 doesn't give the courts or the executive branch the power. It gives the state legislatures, specifically by name under the federal Constitution, to determine who the electors will be. And early in our history, the state legislature chose the electors. And recently in our history, in 2000 in Florida, when they had a rogue Democrat-controlled Supreme Court, the Republican state legislature had taken steps to appoint the electors because the Supreme Court of Florida had blocked the process and they wanted to make sure electors get there. Also in our history, we've had two sets of electors sent to Congress as well. It's not a crime for a candidate to ask or to lobby state legislators to take a look at what's taken place or to change the outcome. You may not like it. You may not think it's politically wise. You may not think it's ethical. It's certainly not illegal, and it's certainly not criminal. Now we have the U.S. Attorney's Office, with the approval of the Attorney General, no doubt, searching the homes and the electronic devices of attorneys, of election attorneys. You have a federal grand jury hearing testimony from information taken from attorneys. The efforts to use criminal statutes that have never been used before in this way to try and manufacture a coup effort or to try and claim some kind of obstruction or interference with the electors or something else, pure and simple, by Biden appointees of justice in the U.S. Attorney's Office, is a horrific, unconscionable abuse of power by people who really are not interested in the Constitution. Now, keep something else in mind. Washington, D.C. is a haven for Democrats, legally, politically, and in every other way. 92%, if I recollect correctly, of the vote in Washington, D.C. went to Joe Biden. 92%. Well, who do you think makes up the grand juries? Who do you think makes up the juries? The people in the city of Washington, D.C. Now, if they voted 92% for Joe Biden or 92% for Hillary Clinton, let's just say overwhelmingly voted for those two candidates, and you have an Attorney General of the United States and a U.S. Attorney trying to bring an indictment in front of a grand jury. And remember, a grand jury, there's no opposition. It's just the prosecutor and the members of that grand jury. And even those witnesses who testify in front of the grand jury are not free to have an attorney present. And if you have a trial, and the jury is made up of individuals out of a pool of overwhelmingly partisan Democrats who voted for the opposition, who either voted for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, and you have a former president or his surrogates facing that jury, how in the hell are they going to get a fair trial? This whole thing is rigged. It's a disgrace, from this committee to the U.S. Attorney, to the Attorney General of the United States, to the so-called justice process in Washington, D.C. Why don't they hold it, if they're going to hold it anywhere else, in Utah or Idaho or someplace like that? No, that would never happen. So my point to you this evening is this. You keep hearing media types and legal analysts go on about what we learned. The fact of the matter is, what we learned is we have a rogue committee, a rogue U.S. attorney, a rogue attorney general, where information is being censored, where contrary witnesses are not permitted to publicly testify because it destroys the narrative, and where this whole system is set up to try and kill the Republican Party generally, MAGA specifically, and Donald Trump overall.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to LevinTV.com and subscribe now.